Peace and assalamu alaikum, everybody. So this here is a bit of a PSA, I guess, for adults and parents, and especially, well, not especially, but also professionals. So my daughter, she's 20 now, but about 3 or 4 years ago, she read this book titled "My Mango Shaped Space," and she has loved this book, and she wanted me to read it, and I'm just now reading it to go along with my little January reading goal of a young adult book. So I'm listening to it, and I'm really I'm still in the first third at this point of the book. But so it's about this girl who a young girl. I think she's 12 or 13. She's in her freshman year of high school, and she has a condition called synesthesia. So synesthesia is when one sense, like of your 5 senses, when one sense kind of carries over to the other. So if you see a word, it may it may conjure like a certain color or a sense or a taste even. Like I remember Kanye West, which to him he thought is what made him a genius. But Kanye West said that he was like that in his art because he's a really good artist, a painter. So he said when he hears music, he sees colors or whatever. It's actually not a rare condition, and I myself have it. But so in the book, this girl has it. And the first time she spoke about it out loud in school, she was in 3rd grade, and she caught hell for it, even from her parents, from her teachers. And now that she's a freshman, she's having a really hard time in math class because when she sees numbers, letters, words, and stuff like that, it correlates to a color for her. And so it's really hard for her to keep, she gets the concept of the mathematical concepts, but for her to work out a problem, come up with the correct equation, anything, is really, really difficult because of how it reworks itself in her brain. And so she hasn't spoken about her condition or how she sees things for many, many years because of what happened to her 6 years earlier. And so, but since she's essentially failing algebra at this point, she felt like she had to go to her parents, right, and tell them, look, I know y'all were tripping before, but this is very real. I wasn't lying, and I've already failed 2 math tests, so I'm just letting you know this is the reason why I'm failing, and there's basically nothing I can do about it. So it is what it is. I just want to let y'all know up front. So her mom is tripping, and the mother and the father start blaming each other. Well, this is your fault because you used to do drugs in the 60s. Well, this is your fault because your relative is crazy, and all this kind of stuff. And they're going back and forth. She's like, hello, this is what I'm talking about. And so they're like, are you crazy? All this kind of foolishness. And then of course she the mother, they immediately call the family doctor, who is an older gentleman at this point. And before this even popped up, they're like, hey, he ain't as sharp as you used to be, And so they take her to him, and he's like, he doesn't know what's going on, but he's not saying he doesn't know what's going on. It's like, long story short, this sort of thing aggravates me. I'm going to tell you why, of course. Because it bothers me when people are so close-minded that it's like, well, I never heard of it before, so something must be wrong with you. You know what I mean? Trust me, I've gotten that so much in my life, even now. And it's just really, really hard. And when you're dealing with a child, and then on top of that, when you are a professional, so, you know, and she's a child too. She's, you know, adolescent years, and she feels like, okay, you're coming for me. You're not saying I'm crazy, but why now you want me to go to a therapist? You might as well just say I'm crazy. Like, I'm not crazy, you know? And so, at this point, like I said, I'm only a third into the book. But at this point, she's just feeling like what she knows is real. No one is validating for her. And, you know, it's just hard. And then the mom is like, well, if you've been going through this, why didn't you come to me before? I wonder why. So, I'm going to tell you, I don't by no means, first of all, I by no means think that I got it going on that I'm like super fierce. Well, I do think I am super fierce. But not because of like I'm any better than anyone else or anything like that. But I'm thankful for the way all my trials and errors that I had to deal with growing up in the world, because people saw me different so much too, like with my hand, with my complexion, growing up in a very dark-skinned neighborhood. Or if you were light-skinned, then you were not black, you were like Latina or something, because I grew up in a very black and Latino area. Or just the way that I was, a lot of my like innate personalities or whatever. So when I always sort of unintentionally was, my thought process or my beliefs was not the norm, not the traditional way of being or thinking. And so I'm sure I've said this in another video or two before, but even like when it came to my family, like my own family, my children, with me homeschooling, with me having been vegan, not now, but I used to be vegan for years, with me not vaccinating, all these things that now are like commonplace, because in my opinion, it became marketable. But things are now commonplace, but back then it wasn't. So I got a lot of resistance and accusations and threats about, you know, calling the authorities on me because I was an unfit mom. But even as a child growing up, I just never fit in. And I know many of you feel the same way. And, you know, we didn't have internet and stuff back then. So if you felt alone, you truly felt alone. You didn't know, like, no, there's thousands of people feel like you, you know, or that think like you, or that act like you. So it can be very difficult for children. And especially if they do not feel that they can come to you and talk about things. Now, I will say, going back to what I started to say before about, it ain't like I think I'm the best or anything, and certainly not in parenting. But I will say a couple of things. With the way I raised my children, again, having homeschooled them, we were together all the time, which I know you other homeschool families can relate to this. There is a difference, I believe. There is a difference in, not saying anyone loves their child less or takes care of their child less, but there is a difference when you're with your child, you know, X amount of hours per day, because they go out to school and you have to go out to work, whatever it, you know, the dynamics are, but you essentially don't spend a lot of time with your child, whether willingly or not willingly. And but when you're in a homeschool family, especially if there are multiple children, you're around each other all the time, so you get to know each other in a different way, a much more intimate sort of way, I believe. And so I know from my family, and two, I'm just kind of like this easy breezy, free spirited type of a person. And so I really tried my best to allow my children to be that. Even in schooling and education, we were pretty much like unschoolers, like they like to, you know, we like to label stuff. But we were pretty much unschoolers, and or even eclectic, but more so like unschoolers, because the way I presented information to them is like, okay, for instance, you need to learn fractions, and you will learn fractions, but we're not necessarily going to go about it strictly by the book. You know what I mean? So we will use, even like percentages, we will use real world activities in order to learn percentages and come up with a way that is practical, and maybe not necessarily the more I don't know how to say, like the more like brick and mortar type of way of going about it, but they learned it and they use it even today as adults. So I was pretty much like that with everything, and so they have always felt, if you know me, you know my children, I ain't lying about that. I pretty much allowed them to kind of express themselves within reason, express themselves in the way they wanted to, learn the things that they wanted to learn. For instance, I'm trying to think of some instances that I can mention. Anyway, so I think that's important, because then that does allow you to have this sort of intimate relationship with your child. And although I'm also old school, because you ain't gonna come to me any kind of way you want to, but I've always left the door open for them to be able to come to me and talk to me about virtually whatever they want to. And I say virtually because some things they may not feel comfortable. I can't think any, because sometimes I'm like, okay, you don't have to tell me all that. I'm like, well, you said we could come to you with whatever. And I gotta just eat that. But I guess I'm more aligned with what this girl is going through. Example, even me as an adult right now. So about a year ago, I was just getting dizzy, like just couldn't figure out why. I thought I knew why, but the doctors were like, nope, that's not it. So they were doing all this testing and stuff. They had me do like this, I think 7-day heart monitor, where I had to write down everything. And because they didn't know if something was wrong with my heart, if they couldn't find anything there, so they're like, well, it must be neurological. Went to the neurologist, and he's like, okay, you're anemic. Like everything that I knew, that I thought it was, and the ER people or whatever were like, no, it's not it. He was like, that's it. But so they ask you a series of questions, and sometimes most of the time I just feel like I don't feel like lying. I don't feel like appeasing these people, these medical professionals that I know are not spiritually inclined. And by spiritual, I do not mean religion. I mean spiritually inclined. And so he asked me, he's like, so do you hear any noises, or do you see things, something like that? And I said, well, I said, look, my family, we're seers. So I do hear things and I do see things. And, it's with the house also. And he's just like, so, people, when something is above their head, or something they're not familiar with, or something that's outside of a realm of belief they have, or even something that's scary to them, it behooves them to just cross it off as you're crazy, or me being of another belief system or religion. What I find is a lot of non-Muslims all the time, Christians in particular, look at you like, oh, you're just what do you call, like a heathen or something, like it must be that Allah stuff, you know what I mean? Or but I feel like this is a lot of what this girl is going through in the book. And I would just like to say, to bring this video to an end, because I feel like I'm going on and on, I would just like to say, if you are a parent or an adult who has responsibilities in caring for young people, and absolutely, if you are a professional, a medical professional, a healthcare professional, first of all, if you're a professional, I think you definitely need to open up your minds and learn about other belief systems, other spiritualities. You don't have to believe in it if you want to, but you need to know that certain things exist. And just because a person says they hear or see or believe something doesn't mean that because it's not conducive to your reality, that it is not a reality, or that it is some sort of blight against them. But yeah, I really think people need to be far more open and weigh out everything. Yes, some people may have mental deficits or mental issues where they're not seeing spirits. I know a lot of Muslims also want to say like, oh, it's a jinn. Everything is not a jinn, honey child, please. So, we just need to be far more open, I think, and beyond just the basic superficial stuff, like just knowing that Jewish people don't eat pork, Muslim people don't eat pork, and don't offer them pork. It goes further than that. And again, the same way you want someone to respect or even validate something that you are saying this is so, then offer those same props to somebody else. All right, I'm stopping this video.